as one of the characters from the last game. We are together, Big Duck Energy, aka Project Replay, coming back at you with some hot gameplay footage. Let's peep out the reel here. This sounds like it's playing through the computer. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna actually minimize for 1 second so I can make. Let me just switch up so sound comes out of the, why can I not minimize this? Yeah, okay. Cool. All right. So all of those are features that have been implemented since the last time that I stood up here. No, I'm just kidding. So in our game, you are playing as a traveler in the age of exploration, but it's a fantasy setting. You're crossing through a deep, dark woods, and you come to realize that gravity functions in a different way here. It's neither universal, it's not constant, and you gradually get lost and turned around. Eventually, you come to a big black obelisk. You touch it. You gain the ability to change the gravity of yourself and of other objects in the environment, but you're still lost, so you end up getting pulled deeper and deeper into the seemingly sentient forest. And that is the story that we have for our game. Okay. Vertical slice. So last time I stood up here, this is what I said we were going to have for you guys by today. We got most of it. So right now we're focusing on the mechanics. On the mechanics side of things for the character controller, we got just about everything except a few bits that are still in progress, a few things which we deprioritized, and I'll talk about why in a second here. And one thing that we ended up losing to the flu, but we're going to get right back at after vertical slice. So what we ended up doing was focusing a lot more on character movement. Oh, sorry, sound too. Everything that we said we were going to get for sound, we got done, even including the fact that Aaron's working with 4 different teams, so thank you, Aaron. You did a great job. Yeah. So what we ended up really doing was focusing some extra calories on a bunch of other features that were really targeted towards mechanics and very specifically movement. So our idea is that our mechanics are pretty simple. We have movement, we have combat, but if we focus on movement first and make sure that it's fun to move around even in a white area, irrespective of the level design, then we're going to have a fun game. You'll notice that a lot of these are either focused directly on character movement or on like UI effects like gravity UI, which allows you to see how much of your gravity ability you have left, which directly impacts movement. And then down here in big, bold letters, our customized character movement. What we did is really cool. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the process later on, but we basically kicked Unreal's physics engine to the curb, and we implemented the ability to plot velocity over time, use an actual graph to be able to set on a frame-by-frame basis the player's velocity as they jump, which is awesome and allows us to make the movement feel really, really good. From an aesthetic standpoint, again, we got most things done here, especially on the art side of things. We only missed out on 2 things related to particles, which was due to a pivot where we focused on a different particle effect instead. On level design is where we had the biggest deviation from what we committed. Originally, our plan was to focus on having a lot of high-level thumbnails and white box levels. So the idea is like, let's go wide and shallow, create a whole bunch of different environments that we can later on develop. But since we were working so heavily on movement, we didn't want to spend a whole lot of calories on things that, you know, if we decide while we play around with movement that you should be able to jump a 4-block chasm instead of a 3-block chasm, then we're going to have to dramatically readjust all our white boxes. So instead what we did is we wanted to remove a bottleneck on art and go really deep into visual targets. And we created two very deep visual targeted levels, which accomplished two things for us. First off, it helped us understand what we were missing from our asset packs, which helped us understand in the, so we it helped us understand what we were missing from our asset packs so that we knew what we needed to prioritize in terms of art creation, but it also helped us create a visual target goal that our art team could work towards so that we're all on the same page and know where we're headed. We also got a whole bunch of extra achievements. 30 environment assets that we did not commit to. We worked on gravity object particles, which is what took the place of the two things we had committed to, because that was more immediately related to movement. I guess I'll just literally read off the list here, but 2 rough lotus spider textures you guys are going to see soon, which looks awesome. We got a character texture. We've got 4 rough environment textures, and we've got some animations that I'm going to highlight for you a little down the road. I'll let the music speak for itself a little like all day, that's what I'm struggling to do. I'm on my bike weaving through traffic, being like, don't take your hands off the handlebar. We got one more clip that's gonna play here. So one thing that's really cool about all of those 3 songs that we just heard is our game has a slow motion mechanic and the ability to change gravity. It's supposed to feel surreal and a little bit unsettling as you do so. Every one of those tracks has the ability for us using Fmod to reverse the sound effects for each of the chords without reversing the chord order, so you can keep the same melody, but when players switch their gravity or enter slow motion, we can use that effect to not only give it a mechanical, like tangible feeling, so the player's like, yes, I just inputted a action and I'm feeling the response and hearing it, but also it kind of adds to the mood of, by playing things backwards, that things are kind of upside down in this forest. Cool, let's talk about art scopes. So we overscoped. This was partly due to us misunderstanding how we were going to set up the art pipeline. But if you think about this maybe more optimistically, this is an example of us being able to create our first couple assets, measure how long each step of the process took, extrapolate that over the remainder of Capstone, and look at it and say, hey, we're not going to be able to produce all these, so let's think about what's really important here. And Carter and I ended up having a conversation where we talked about, okay, well, what mechanics do we actually need in the game? And we realized that for every feature that art planned on introducing, you need to create not only a bunch of levels that introduce that feature to the player and kind of explore the depths with it, but then you also need to create additional levels that combine those features. So not only were we overscoped in terms of art, but when you really thought about the level design implications of all the things that art was going to create, we were overscoped in terms of level design too. So this allowed us to focus on what was we actually wanted to have in the game, and now we're looking much better and much more focused for both art and level design. So let's talk a little bit about what we are doing. And also, let's talk a little bit about how good this spider looks. Carter tells me this is the rough draft of it, but like, man, it looks so polished to me. Originally, we were going to do 3 different enemies. Now we're cutting that back down to 2. but we are going to do texture swaps to allow similar but different abilities between them. And like this is something everybody's familiar with. You have green Koopas and you have red Koopas, and they behave differently. But to me, when I look at those, I think like, hey, this is still looks like the same thing. I feel like they don't look like very different enemies, whereas I feel like the job that the artist did here, these look so distinctly different to me. I think it's fantastic. Less enemies also means less animation, so we're able to put more detail into each of those. I'm going to go through the animations that we've done so far and talk a little bit about how they contribute to tone. So again, we're not playing as like some like powerful knight expert adventurer who's like totally in their element. This is somebody out of their element, and their animations should reflect that. They look around cautiously when they're not moving. When they fall from a great height, they're not like Batman style diving off the roof. They are actually falling. Here you can see at the end we have like a wall ride animation here. They walk around cautiously. Let's look at some of the spider animations here. So we talked a little bit in the last presentation about how the forest should feel like one coherent entity. So we have the spider taking into visually an aspect of the forest and the flower to make it look more at one with the environment. It attacks using a gravity mechanic, keeping consistent with our mechanics. It changes your gravity in the direction of the spider into the spinneret here, which eats you. And here you can see it dying, just as all spiders should. This took us 35.5 hours. Originally, we're going to have 3 different environments with 3 different distinct sets of assets. This is where we most overscoped. So instead of having 3 different distinct assets, we're going to have one asset pack that works for one environment, which is going to be the forest. And we are going to stagger the introduction of those assets so that we can still have a sense of a beginning, a middle, and an end, and a sense of moving deeper into the forest without us having to come up with like 3x the number of assets, especially when we have only one environmental modeler. So before we were going to have like an underground area and everything, now we're just sticking with the forest. In terms of how this affected our ability to make basic platforms, like many platformers, we are sticking with a grid-based structure. Benefits of this are that players get to quickly, subconsciously recognize, like, hey, I can clear, if you look at like a 3 grid wide chasm, I know I can clear that, but a 4 grid wide one, I know I can't. People start to pick up that quickly, so we don't want to, we want to stick to that, tried and true design strategy. And by creating all of our platform assets and to fit one of these 3 different dimension specs, we're going to be able to, and then having multiple types for each one, we're going to be able to tile them and add them to each other to make any combination or size of platforms that we need that allow us to continue to iterate quickly without designing new custom assets as we go. Also talked last time about how we're using Houdini. Houdini's come along really good. We're making rocks, mushrooms, and trees in it also. This allows us to theoretically make infinite assets that we can be used for either. These can be used not only for like decorating levels, but also we can specify dimensions of platforms and use Houdini to make platforms of that specification. So even though we overscoped in terms of our creation, we're still looking like we're sitting in a really great place in terms of assets that we actually need to make the game feel good. Another cool thing is we can have a huge level of control over this, so not only dimensions of platforms that we create here, but we can also control things like poly count very easily. So if we want to have big, impressive set pieces with this, we can do that and keep it at a high poly count, or we can reduce it so it's a low poly count and keep it smaller in the environment. And what you're also seeing here is this is literally the steps required to create a new asset, and we're going through really quick. Like I think there's like another 15 seconds left in this video. So the ability to iterate and pump out new assets here is really, really fast. I'm going to let it just get to the end here. Yeah. Oh, and this took us 32.5 hours. So final score, this is what we've done for vertical slice. So that gives us 16 trees, 2 ground blocks, 4 mushrooms, 5 platforms, 4 rocks, 2 vines, 1 lotus spider, 1 player character, 3 textures, 38 assets. Which at the bottom you can see how much time that all took us. And again, like, man, I'm just so impressed. We're working with one environmental artist. We've got Renee working on Houdini. We've got Christian contributing a lot for player models. But this felt like just massive output. So I'm just like so stunned with what we were able to produce. Oh, so let's talk about, so for levels, again, we didn't do high-level white boxes as much as 2 deep dives. In the upper right-hand corner here, you can kind of see how we start with a grid-based structure. I'm going to walk you through what that process looks like a little bit. So here's a level that Adam made. You can white boxing allows us to first test and see how the level feels, and then we can make changes to it accordingly for gameplay. This one, we ended up taking 3 passes at dressing the level for, each time getting a lot of feedback from people inside of our capstone group, as well as Rick gave us a lot of good feedback, until we came with a final product that looked, way better than the original. I'll try to flip back and forth there real quick. This process ended up taking 41 hours. If you extrapolate that out over the rest of Capstone and with the number of level designers we have, that gives us between like 12 and 15 levels that we can make. We're expecting this number to go down a little bit, especially because we'll be able to start looking at, this was like just exploring what our levels should look like, and when we are able to look at other levels that have already been built, we'll have a clear direction for how to dress levels, and we're hoping that that hour count comes down a little bit. We're also going to change our process a little bit. So moving forward, it's a lot easier to create and quickly iterate on white boxes. So starting immediately and going through May, we're going to keep on coming with white boxes for levels. We're also going to integrate this into a process where we have weekly level meetings and regular play testing. So what we'll be able to do is start using that to figure out what are our favorite levels. And then once we know what levels feel the best to play and are our favorites, we can start kind of filling in the area around that. And that will give us an understanding of what levels and features are going to be introduced at the beginning, in the middle, and at the end of our game. And once we understand our best levels and the shape of when things start getting introduced, we'll be able to take those and starting in April, extending up through June, and start actually dressing the levels. Important to note that we're going to be playtesting throughout this whole process, since naturally, once you dress a level, players might respond to it differently. So we can't just kind of rest on our laurels saying people like the white box, right? Cool. So this is what our game's going to ultimately have based on all that process that we just talked about. Yeah. Cool. Playtesting. Playtesting is really important. We're going to be doing it on the 1st of every month. And we're also going to take advantage of all the playtest events that other people have already started scheduling on, like the 3rd, the 19th, and the 10th. We've already started talking to groups about securing down who's going to actually be able to playtest for us. As best we can, we're trying to line up industry insiders to playtest more towards the beginning, and more casual game enthusiasts to playtest towards the end once things are decorated. But that being said, we're not going to, if an opportunity arises where we can either playtest with like casual gamers early on or not at all, we're going to want to take advantage of those. So data collection. So data collection is really, really important for us. We've got a really strong tech design team. We have a ton of people. I think 6 people so far have contributed blueprints, and a lot of people are writing almost exclusively in blueprints. So we have a lot of blueprints. Blueprints are not designed naturally for storing and exporting data. They are messy and kind of difficult to read. But we have a lot of them in the game already, and we have a lot of people that can contribute blueprints. So we're basically at a crossroads right now where we can either do data collection in blueprints, which is messy and error prone, but we have a lot of people who can write them, and it doesn't mean that we have to do any big refactorings, or we can refactor the character blueprint into C++, which is a really big upfront cost, but then long term, it gives us a lot more control over what we do. So we have to make this decision before spring break, because that's when the refactoring would happen. Either way, though, we're still able to make data collection a really big part of our project. Project Replay, don't forget it. We're doing play testing. We're iterating. That's who we do. That's who we are. That's what we do. For documentation, our mechanics have, while we've tweaked a lot the field mechanics, the principle of them haven't changed. So a lot of the design documents that we have from the first presentation still apply. Instead, what we've been focusing a lot more are on areas, one, where we're analyzing how other games implement mechanics. So on the left-hand side, you can see we did this for a bunch of games, but I went frame by frame through like Donkey Kong Tropic Freeze and tracked how high you jump at each stage of the jump. And I also looked at like different grid sizes for different video games to try to figure out, well, how do things like your jump height and the speed that a player moves impact the size of a grid that you can have on the screen. We're also trying to come up with some new language around discussing the difficulty of movements between save points in a platformer, to allow us to better facilitate conversations around game flow and difficulty. And I'm also doing things like just really deep dives on how other games are designing their levels to try to figure out how we can how our mechanics can take similar concepts or similar difficulties, but transform them into something that's unique to our mechanics and our game feel. And this has been like hugely helpful. One of the great things about having simple mechanics is it's allowed us to do a real deep dive on what makes platformers fun. For task estimations, we've been generally trending towards estimating tasks to be take us a little bit longer than they actually do, which is good and a bit deliberate. We said people early on we would rather you overestimate the length that task is going to take you than underestimate it, because we didn't want, especially when people are really new at this, we didn't want people saying, oh, this is going to take me 4 hours and only getting credited for 4 hours when they spend 25 hours or whatever working on a project. So we're going to start talking now about, like, okay, have we gotten to the point where people are getting good about estimating? We should start pulling back on this. But so far, this trend is something that we've been that was deliberate and been very happy with. In terms of risks for art, like I said, we've only got one environmental modeler. So if Alexis gets some lucrative job opportunity and leaves us all behind, we are in trouble. Except who's that coming in? We got Christian. So if they both get lucrative job offers, we're sunk. But for the time being, our plan is that if we put too much work on Alexis's shoulders, Christian is going to be able to come in and make up for our mistake by helping her accomplish. Are we taking questions now? I'll take a question. What did I say? I said Christian and Alexis. Did I say somebody's name wrong? Okay, yeah. Okay. Also, we're leaving a whole month at the end for polish. Now I'm really self-conscious. I'm worried I've been calling somebody the wrong name for the last several months. Okay. We're leaving a whole month for polish at the end too, so we should have extra time. So parallax, and this is something that got delayed a little bit due to the flu. What we want to be able to do is, so if you look at 3D platformer games like Donkey Kong, they do a lot of stuff with the camera to make sure that while platforms have depth, ones that they anticipate a player wants to jump onto will be level with the height of the camera or above it, so that it flattens out the depth of the platform and makes it more obvious exactly where you can land on it. That's more complicated by our environment because people can land on all 4 sides of platforms, so we can't do the same exact trick. One way that we can still try to do that is by tilting the camera slightly to flatten out platforms. The reason I'm talking about that is we haven't found any examples of games that will tilt camera but use parallax. So what we want to do is test how can we tilt a camera slightly but still use parallax in the background, and how can we make that look good? Like maybe we can link parallax directly with the camera. We can have it tilt in the opposite direction as we do so. We're going to test that. If it looks good, then we're doing something awesome that improves gameplay feeling that no other game has done before that we can find. If it doesn't work, that's fine too. So far, we've been playtesting it without any sort of camera tilt, and that still feels good. But it is a risk worth mentioning. Feature iteration. So we've been doing a ton of iterating. I just want to prove that point, so I'm not, so you guys can actually believe me when I say that. So originally, we built a version of jump and gravity shift. We spent 16 hours building a more in-depth version of the jump, which we ran into some difficulty with, but also we came to realize through implementing it wasn't the way we wanted jump to actually feel. So we came up with a way to actually use a curve like I was talking about, where we can plot the exact velocity of the player over time after inputting the jump button. It felt so good that we implemented it for a version 2 of the gravity shift, and that felt good that we implemented it for a new mechanic of wall sliding, which didn't feel good. So now we're doing a new way to do wall sliding, which is looking promising, and we might end up taking that back to impact the way that we have them walk on ceilings and walls. So it's a lot, we're not afraid to go back and hammer out our core mechanics to make sure that they feel good. Because our belief is if our core mechanics feel good, then it doesn't even matter what environment we put the player in. It's going to be a fun game. This is a promising trend I wanted to highlight. So for Houdini, every time we introduce a new asset, it's been taking us a lot less time to get up and running with that asset. So rocks, when we first were trying to get that going, it took us 25-ish hours. And mushrooms are a lot quicker. Trees have been the fastest so far. In terms of how we've been making assets by hand, one change that we made midway through basically our project so far was we started having Alexis work a lot more with ZBrush, which allowed us to make assets that it doesn't actually save time, but it makes them just look a lot better. And in the long run, probably saves time on polish. Here's what we're going to be doing between now and the end of capstone. One thing worth pointing out is we're taking a hard pivot on the engineering side to start working on data collection. That's going to be the focus for engineering for the whole latter half of the project. Also, you'll notice the word playtesting is brought up like 10 or 12 times here, so you know, that's what we're doing. I don't know if I mentioned that yet. Cool. I'd like to invite the lovely Tommy down here to play our game for you guys. How do I make this do the laser pointer? There we go. I got it. I answered my own question. Awesome. So here's the menu screen that we're working with right now. Josh helped set this up. Thank you, Josh. There's a lot of Joshes. I'm talking about the Josh on our team. Cool. Yeah, look at that. All right. So here's the visual target level that Adam built. Tommy, can you go up here and show him how the spider enemy works? A little wall jump in there. So right now the spider enemy works by changing your gravity and sucking you in until eventually you get eaten in the flower on the back end, which to my knowledge is unique to how spiders work in our game. You can also still select objects and throw them. Our work so far has been largely focused on movement, so a big pivot we're making after vertical slices is to finalizing movement and start working on mechanics a little bit more. You have a power-up over here that allows you to, normally when you jump in the air, you can only change your gravity once until you touch the surface. When Tommy got that power-up, it allowed him to do it a second time, and then when he touched the wall again, it allowed him to it restored his gravity and touched the wall, and then you can always cancel your gravity so you fall back down towards the surface. You can also see we've got a resource timer over here, so if Tommy stands on the ceiling a little bit, you'll notice that naturally drains. This is to increase the sense of urgency when we look at other platformers, especially ones with short levels. You see a lot of crumbling platforms, a lot of platforms with enemies on them and bandsaws like a Super Meat Boy that don't let you stand still for a very long time. We still want to have safe zones in our levels, which will be the ground, but this means that you can't just kind of rest on a ceiling indefinitely. Cool. You want to go to the white box? Cool. So this is the two-part level that we worked on to hammer out making sure mechanics felt better. Something that's really important for our game is to make sure that every obstacle players have to overcome, unless it's to collect a special power-up or a secret. But generally, to get to beat the game, you have to overcome the same levels. We want to give players freedom in the way to do it. So every single aspect has a couple different paths. Every single obstacle here is this is one, this is one, and this is one. There's multiple ways to get to the game. So, yeah, Tommy just said that you can jump into this wall and climb across. You can also... Nope. We got it. You got it. Yeah. I think it's even better highlighted in this section, where from that point, Tommy can go to this wall, you can go to that ceiling. There's a couple different ways to get through. Something cool I wanted to demonstrate here is if you are wall sliding, so if you walked on the ceiling here, it would have drained his gravity resource and it would have been harder to get through. Wall sliding is a way to encourage players to go for a more difficult move, but as a result, they get to keep their resources. Yeah, cool. This beginning bit, we had a few people playing over the weekend, and there's like 6 or 7 different ways to get through. This one section is actually monologue, an obstacle in Celeste, but it's actually just in terms of the number of inputs you need to do to get from one safe zone to the second safe zone. But there's like 5 or 6 different ways you can actually get through it. Or, that's one way. We're going to go back and show like Charles' method. Here's a cool one that Charles figured out. It's pretty tough though. Charles is very good. Yeah, for Tommy. think Tommy just had like 4 different ways you get through. That's the way that our game allows player choice. That's what's fun about our game. And what's cool is showing, you know, even early on, just showing some people on a cohort this, and having people sit down and think like, okay, how do I want to get through this section? People would plan it out ahead of time, and then almost everybody came up with different ways. One more try. Oh. All right. It was a wonderful try. Cool. So the last thing we got here is our, we had a screenshot of this earlier, but now you can see all of our assets actually up close and personal. Tommy, you want to like cruise around a little bit? Yeah. Look how scary those spiders look, but also kind of pretty. It's. Mm-hmm.
Procedurally generated trees. Not procedurally generated trees. And of course, the rocks and platforms.
Yeah. Again, like so happy with what our artists came up with for, like, especially when we have one environmental artist. I think they just knocked it out of the park here. Cool, but that's what we've got. Do you want to go to the?
I'm the development director for Studio Scrapbot, and this is Snowmads. So over the last month, we've made a lot of progress, and we've made a lot of revisions to our design. And in doing so, our schedule differs from the typical FIEA schedule that we can expect. But in that process, we've made a lot of aesthetic progress. Our artists have come out with beautiful assets that show the low poly art style and make the world really come together. On the technical side, we've come out with interesting AI elements, a unique challenge because of the social implications of some of the gameplay, and some compelling UI changes. And our designers have focused heavily on finding the fun elements in our game. So we wanted to prioritize making a game that is fun for players and fulfilling for the developers. To explain this fun, I'd like to set a scene. You come to a wide open clearing. Snow covers the ground. In the distance, we hear birds chirping. A small stream meanders through this clearing. And we see Lynx, the leader of a group of nomads, accompanied by Flicker, you, the player. They're gathering berries to feed their tribe, and Flicker approaches the stream. She looks first at herself in the reflection, and her attention turns upwards to the sky, to the dancing, spectacular aurora borealis. But she sees something, a glimmer. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, nothing happens. The sky's not falling. Nobody's dead yet. So Lynx turns to Flicker, and he says, I've got to go away tomorrow. I have to gather food for our winter harvest feast the following week, and I need you to care for these nomads. He gives her his medallion, and he says, this has control over time itself, and you will be able to care for these nomads in my absence using this medallion. The nomads are happy, they're strong, It's important that you keep it that way. So our direction recently has transformed in many ways, but it's also stayed the same in a few. Namely, you're still the leader of a group of nomads, but connotations matter, and realistically, you're more of a babysitter than a leader. Your objective is still to maintain your people's health, and the ultimate goal of the player is to ensure the survival of their tribe. And where we've changed is these nomads have become significantly more self-destructive. It's our objective to save them from themselves, to prevent their injury and untimely death, to minimize loss during our day of rain, and to use the medallion to prevent casualties as like an aesthetic adaptation of a save load mechanic. I'd like to walk through an example here. So you, as Flicker, come out of your tent, and you see some firewood, some cloudberries, a fishing rod, and Bear and Twig, two of your nomads. Twig is talking to Bear, and Bear's saying how hungry she is, how she thinks she's going to go fishing later today. She wants to fish. Twig sees you and thinks, ah, perfect opportunity. Flicker, would you please gather that firewood for me? It's his responsibility. He's asking you to do it. But we're a benevolent leader, so we take this firewood. Bear takes her fishing rod. She goes to fish. Twig, much like us, just likes to sleep. So he nods off. And when Bear goes to fish, the ice is too thin. She falls in the lake and dies, and it's very sad. But we have a medallion, a special medallion, capable of returning us to the beginning of our day, where once again, Bear says she's hungry, she's going to go fishing, and Twig asks you for firewood. Ron, what would you like to do?
Tell Twig to get his own firewood.
So, if we choose to do nothing, besides communicate, Twig will be unhappy that that you will not gather the firewood for him. Bear will still fall into the lake. Twig will fall asleep after he's done, and Bear will still tragically die. Once again, we can take this from the top. Rick, what would you like to do? We don't have violence incorporated into this game. Josh, yeah, what would you like to do?
Let's tell Bear I saw the future and you're going to die if you go fishing.
So if we speak to Bear, she'll talk to you stubbornly, like the level-headed, strong woman that she is. She will ignore your warning, saying, no, I've gone fishing 1,000,000 times. The ice is not too thin. And lo and behold, she falls into the lake and dies, and it's very sad. Adam, what would you like to do?
What happens when we try to use those cloudberries?
So another alternative is you gather the bushel of cloudberries nearby, and you can offer those to Bear, an alternative to solve her hunger problem. She accepts those berries. She feels satisfied. Twig is still hurt that you didn't gather his firewood for him, but that's his job. And Bear walks off happy. Oh, yeah. So this example demonstrates the core loop of our game. And the features that we have implemented that lend towards this, we wanted to make sure that we focused on finding the fun of the game in its entirety. And to do that, we've made sure that we implemented Nomad functionality, one complete scene that makes the whole mechanic come together, in addition to a number of artistic factors. Our original feature plan had a lot more involved, and we've decided that what we wanted to do was revise the things that we didn't find were fun or creatively fulfilling for our developers. Namely, the crafting system and the behest system felt too much like chores for the player. And the scenario system is something we decided to keep. It seemed like it lent itself towards this new mechanic. Weather in Aurora and a single campsite were aspects that we didn't get to, but we managed to include one point of interest, the frozen lake. So mechanically, I'm going to step us through that example in our game loop chart. So first, we observed what happened. and we were asked for firewood, we interacted with the NPCs, and we reached a fail state. But we used our time reset to go back to the beginning, and we were able to, using the cloudberries and feeding bear, reach the success state and move on about the game. We have a number of different interactions you can partake in at this frozen lake. Namely, with objects, you can take, give, or drop them, and you can also use them as a contextual action. For example, if you take the fishing pole, you might go fishing, and you can use that item in an appropriate scenario. NPCs also have certain interactions you can interact with them with. Namely, you can have a dialogue. You can communicate with characters and, in some cases, change the course that they take. You can also just observe their actions. Sit back, watch how things play out, and choose to modify after you've already gone back. We also have special interactions, like a live information feed that updates for the player, kind of like Twitter for nomads. And we have character status panels, and these represent what certain nomads have a higher tendency to do. So to explain how these events work, we're going to look at our event scene act hierarchy. An event, something like bear taking the fishing pole, is a single atomized event that happens and leads to further events down the scene hierarchy. A scene is a collection of these events strung together in a schedule. A nomad will follow a schedule unless interfered with by the player. Namely, if we take the fishing pole here, it sends bear on a different route. And then an act is a collection of scenes that can happen in close proximity or even simultaneously chronologically. To demonstrate this, we have an example of cave crystals. Twig has been asked to go gather some cave crystals to decorate for the winter festival that's approaching. And as we know Twig tend to do, he falls asleep a lot. We can sympathize. So if Twig goes to the cave unhindered by Flicker's interference, he will go to the cave and fall asleep in the process of gathering these crystals. And a wandering bear might come by. And that bear will maul Twig. And unfortunately, Twig will die. And it's very sad. But we also have a wolf in our midst. This wolf is a companion to these nomads. And when Twig is assigned to go to the cave crystals, you could have him bring the wolf along through dialogue. And if he does so, Twig will go to the cave and fall asleep as he would, but the wolf will be there, and when the bear shows up, the wolf will help fight for Twig's life, saving him, but unfortunately, our wolf will die. There's a simultaneous event that happens while these cave crystals are being gathered. Namely, Leaf has fallen ill, and her friend Beak is hell-bent on finding the medication and berries nearby. So Beak will go and attempt to find these berries, provided the player doesn't interfere, but Beak has no medical knowledge, no doctorate. And she will find a number of berries that are poisonous to consume, and bring those back, happily feeding Leaf these berries, who will promptly die. It's very sad. But we can interfere. We can tell Beak, no, you have no medical knowledge of what's around here and what has medicinal purposes. And Beak, also stubborn, won't listen to us. So what we can do is we can warn Leaf, who, when given the berries, will opt to give you the berries, saying, I understand, I'm not going to eat these poisonous berries. And all of this happens simultaneously, so it's important to the player that they understand where they need to be at the correct moments so they can play through this event and save as many nomads as possible. So the end of the game is depicted by the number of nomads that you have alive by the time you reach the end of the day. So there are 4 possible endings. 1, everyone survives. And Lynx is happy with your ability to lead your people and not kill anyone in 24 hours. Most survive. Lynx is a bit surprised that not all of them are alive, but still happy that there's more than half of them, 6 or more, of our 12 possible, that survived. Few survive, 5 or less. Lynx is unhappy and doesn't consider you a capable leader of this tribe. And none survive. Lynx and you have to consider your own future, as you depended on the nomads as much as they depended on you. So let's get into the art style that we've established over the last month. 2 months, right? We have a low poly art style where we've depicted some trees here and some dead trees. Don't worry, they won't count against your nomad count. Some berries, firewood, etc., to try to bring this environment together in a way that feels cohesive and that the art style will work with the lighthearted nature of the gameplay. Our characters, namely this is the base model for the nomad, and then to make varieties of nomads, we will accessorize and decorate the base nomad character in various ways to make multiple unique characters while saving time where we can. Flicker is this main character here with the crown and the hair and the scarf. And we can see the accessories separated from the character model as well as the character model as a whole. And this here is a video of the wonderful rig that shows how the nomad can move. We'll watch a bit of that. See the fascinating ways that they can die. We have a number of tileable textures to bring this environment to life, namely snow, ice, and rock. And we can get into some of the production of Snowmads. This is the typical FIEA capstone schedule. Thank you. So this is the typical FIEA capstone schedule. And this is a more realistic schedule for the development of Snowmads. Our timeline does not quite line up, but we're confident that we'll be able to hit each of our milestones moving forward, and our vertical slice is expected to be at target at the end of next week. Additionally, we've refined our weekly schedule. So we have our developers on Monday. They get their tasks, and they're asked to assess those tasks for any risks that might be associated with them. And during the rest of the week, we have what's dedicated development time. This is where we're discouraged from holding as many meetings as we can so that the developers have as much time as possible to devote towards completing their tasks. And then during Friday and Saturday, we have test and evaluation. This is where code review, blueprint review, and art critique happen. And it's where playtests will happen moving forward. And then on Sunday, we have a planning day dedicated to establishing the tasks for the next week for all of our developers to risk analyze. So we took a look at the art pipeline to make sure that we have the budget to afford the art assets that we expect. So in looking at it, in looking at this, we expect about 6.5 hours for a simple environmental model and about 8.5 for a more complex one. And we can break this down based on the number of those we have expected and how many hours we have available for our 3D artists and environmental artists to spend on these specific tasks. Now, characters are much more complex. Naturally, a character from start to finish takes roughly 45 hours, split among these tracks in art.
Attention, please. There has been a report of an emergency. Proceed calmly to the nearest exit and leave the building immediately. Do not use the elevators. Use stairwells where necessary. All handicapped occupants shall use the building evacuation plan.
Please don't beep. Oh. Should I talk over it? Oh. I'm going to do my best to talk over this moving forward. So that is really hard to do. So this is our established character pipeline and how much we can expect to spend on any given character from start to finish. Fortunately, we've made the decision to reuse rigs and reuse the base model to modify these characters to make a number of unique ones without spending the hours that would be necessary to do so. So this is realistically what it would look like to make a character under this system. Rick, I'm laughing because you're laughing. So this is really hard. So we expect that a character under this system with the rig and the established model that we have would take about 8 to 13 hours of development time. And we expect to have 12 of these with various different colors, accessories, and clothing. And we still including the time that we would spend on both the base character and the animation, or the environmental art, we still have hours left over under budget while we're scheduling at 80%. We did the similar process for our design, namely making a scene. And we're using a system called Artisy, which we will demonstrate in a bit, that allows us to import dialogue and write scenes for, and then export to JSON in a way that gets our pipeline moving as quickly as possible. As we can see, most of the time is located in our Artisy integration, our implementing and scene in Unreal, logic and build testing. And we expect, as we move forward, that these times will decrease as we get better and better at implementing these scenes. But even still, at the 30-hour capacity that we expect, we come in under budget by a full 24 hours from just our narrative and level designers. Now, we also established some of these numbers for our technical designers and our producers, or sorry, programmers. And in doing so, we've established that the programmers have a total 216 hours until the end of the semester, 66 of which we're expecting to contribute towards mechanics. The rest is technical design, and the 150 that we expect them to contribute towards systems and managers. Once again, scheduling at 80% what their total hours for the rest of the semester could be. And we still come in both of these categories, about 50 hours under budget. So our schedule moving forward focuses a lot in production 1, in this next milestone, on the menus and UI, dialogue, Artisy, finalizing the level design. For art, we're focused on lighting, character variations, and fleshing out our environment. And for programming, we're refining our AI and our time reset mechanic. For our burn-up chart, we can see this blue line is our expected hours, and this white line is the hours that we've contributed. As we can see, there's a small dip here, but we're back on track, and we expect that we'll be caught up in no time. So you can go ahead and move into the gameplay demo with Daniel.
Where necessary, all handicapped occupants shall use the building evacuation plan.
So, when we drop in, we'll see a number of nomads exploring this icy lake. We can approach and observe the events that unfold during this first day. We'll watch Bear, the red nomad, go towards the lake, examine the lake, and decide that she's going to go fishing. Twig here is going to approach the campfire and fall asleep. Now, as expected, when we allow Bear to fish, she will unfortunately fall in and die, and it's very sad. But we've thought of this. So we can access our medallion to restart the day, and here we can also see the Twitter feed for what the nomads are doing at any given moment. Let's go ahead and restart, Daniel. So when we restart, we'll have a number of other options. And this differs a bit from our example given in the PowerPoint, so we'll showcase how that is expressed. So what we're going to do is take the fishing pole before Bear can decide to go fishing. Now Bear will react to our decision, and she'll see us take the fishing pole and follow us until we give her the fishing pole so she can go fishing. She'll go fishing, and as you expect, she'll fall in and die, and it's very sad. We can go ahead and restart once again. Oh yeah, we can see our inventory system here. So when we restart now, we'll decide, Twig, who fell asleep by the campfire, we'll decide maybe we can wake him up. Maybe he can be of some help. He's a strapping young man when he's not sleeping. Well, he is when he's sleeping, too. So once he falls asleep, we can interact with him to wake him up. He'll go about collecting firewood as he is assigned, but he'll hear something. He'll hear the ice cracking. And when Bear falls in, Twig will run to her rescue, saving the life of Bear, and all of our nomads survive. Now additionally, we can demonstrate our dialogue system by speaking with Leaf here in the corner. And Leaf will say, Flicker, can you gather some firewood for me? I do it myself, but I'm very tired. We'll say, we're happy to help. She says, great, so where do I look? I look around the tree line nearby. I think I saw a bunch of those twigs just laying around. So we'll finish that dialogue, and then we can take a look into Artisy and how we can modify the dialogue without having to rebuild the game. So we'll add an additional dialogue string here, which is somewhat comical. We'll make sure we export. And now when we open and we speak to Leaf, we'll see our additional dialogue option during the second round of dialogue. So we'll say happy to help. And now we have the option, bye, I love you, to which she says, aw, thanks, Bae. And it's very romantic. Thank you.
Okay. So, it's been a long month. We've crammed out a lot of work, and we're super excited to show you what we've been up to all this time. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me present you In Harmony. Okay, so in the last episode of In Harmony, what did we have in January? For game design, we had a completed GPD, we have a narrative Bible, an LDD, and a dance moves prototype. For programming, we had big syncing, we have a dialogue system, we tried to use UWP. We have our coding standards. For art, we had a completed ASG. We had a concept art for the characters and the environment. And what Kevin did was a critical path process analysis and lots of workflows. So what was the game about? I don't remember. I really don't remember. So like, it's a game about harmonizing with the beast. So we have Gaia, who has to go to the proving grounds to do her rites of passage. And she has to find her mentor, who is not there Instead, she finds a beast, a rampaging beast that wants to kill her. So only by harmonizing and coping with this beast will she be able to go through her rites of passage and eventually know the beast's sorrow. So our main mechanic is focusing that works like C targeting. So when you focus on the beast, you can hear its internal melody, which is its emotions and its thoughts. You have to, as you focus on the beast and hear its melody, you have to dodge on the beat of to that melody, and you will start to sing along and soothe the beast. The longer streak of dodges in beats, the faster the soothing. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That's how you dodge on beats. We have interference as any communication. We have interference, and that's created at critical points that are physical afflictions that don't let the beast communicate properly with the character. And those are soothed with in two steps, first focus and then dance. So dancing has different properties in this world. You can focus on something and dance, and it will mimic the same motion of your dance. And that is not only on the beast, but also works on the environment. You can focus on the stuff on the environment, and it will mimic the dance move. So yeah, that's a little summary of what our game's about. Okay, so iteration was a big word in this month. A big word that saved us from hell and boosted our productivity to like unimaginable levels. So I'll be having this hashtag throughout the entire slide. It is, and it has a little bit like, so it is iterate or die. So yeah, I'll be doing that every time I get the, in honor to iteration and what it represents for us. So let's get started. For the art. Okay, so let's start with our biggest risks from the previous presentation. We have the boss battle as a critical, in the critical path. So like any delays on the boss battle in any of the 4 areas would delay the whole project. So what did we do? We started working iteratively on proxies and build on top and top and top and top because that was the only way to work on this boss battle. So again, iterate or die. So cool, cool, cool. Now let's present the beast. Okay. 3, 2, 1. There's our beast. Yeah, as we imagined it, as it was in the concept we showed in the previous presentation, and this is what Daya is gonna be seeing throughout her journey. So cool. And we had to make a proxy rig for the iteration part, so we could animate before the model was actually done, and we could iterate on this model. So again, iterate or die. So yeah, for animations, we have proxy animations for walk, bite attack, idle, and claw attack. And our process was different because, like, okay, so how do you make those attacks go on beat? Like, I don't really understand how to do it. So this is how it works. If we are in in a 4/4 format, we have 4 beats per measure. We use the first 3 beats to do a wind-up, the 4th beat to make an attack, and an entire measure to make the recovery of the attack. So that means if we start on beat, we will always end on beat, and that's how it works behind the scenes. And one of the most interesting things about our process in this is that our animator actually animates to a metronome. So like we have a BPM setup, and this is how it works. So we have a track here, and she has to animate to the beat. Like, where in the world do you animate to a metronome? So like this is one of the coolest parts of our process. Okay, so for the dancer, again, okay. 3, 2, 1. Oh my God, there is Daya. So like she's at 42K tries, and okay, so the good news here is that she doesn't look boring, like her back doesn't look boring. And this is what we will see like 80% of the time in game. So that's good news. And here we have like a closer look to her face, and we can see that the topology is okay. and everything is looking cool. So we had to make a proxy rig as well, iterate or die. So yeah, to prototype her dance moves and like iterate and build on top of them. And we're almost in a final rig. We have an alpha version, which is like we need to make some motion tests, and it will be good to go. But yeah, we're getting there. We have run, turn, and dodge and proxy animations for her as well. And as a bonus, we have our little NPCs. Okay, so here are a little bird creature NPCs that like will guide you throughout the journey. So we have them as a bonus from those two others. And for environment, what do we have for environment? Okay, so first we have a ruin set. This is continuum of the ruin set. We have an action blocks assets. So like these are the assets that the action blocks need in order to work. And finally, we have a rock set. So let's make some more numbers. We have 10 action block models plus 15 from the ruin set plus 12 from the rock set. We have 37 unique environmental assets made. So we also have a first pass of the lighting. Here is how it looks. Well, the screen the color of the screen like changes it a lot, but like yeah. So yeah, this is the arena. This is our visual target. As we promised, we have it lit and we have it set press. So yeah, we also reimagined the arena, which I will touch later. But yeah, we have our first pass of lighting for the arena. Okay, design has been a wild journey this month. And let me show you our process in here. So first, we had to put some mantras in the minds of our designers. You shall put stuff on the screen. You shall iterate early and often. You shall not get attached to any idea. You shall support the premise, and you shall follow the fun. And as a result, we have an overwhelmingly positive progress. We have 52 paper action blocks, 25 white boxes from those, 4 fully functional action blocks, and 1 set pressed. And on top of that, we spent 18 hours of playtesting and iteration on these. So do you remember these from the previous presentation? Well, it seems that we have 4 as much. So yeah, this has been a wild journey. And these are some of them in action, so like GIFs of them in action. Different action blocks. Okay. So something really good that we have is you can go right now to Best of Show and you can see this. This is the action block wall. So like here we put all of our action blocks and we categorize them. And this picture is actually from February 15. But we went from some action blocks to a wall full of action blocks. And here you can really see our iterative process with that. So our design team embraced the iterative process. How it works is we have paper action blocks. Then there's like some tests that we do on them. If it passes those tests, we go to white boxing. Other tests are done. If it passes those tests, we go to implementation, and then we go into internal playtesting. Oh, so the word. Iterate or die. So yeah. And we really embrace the essence of iteration in our team. So how does iteration look for a level? Let's see. So for this level, we have iteration 1, second iteration, third iteration, fourth iteration, fifth iteration, and finally the 6th iteration. Here we can also see how we play tested and iterated over and over again. So like the rightmost is the first version, and this one is the latest version. Okay, so data. For the data we have right now, we have, although the amount of paper action blocks that we made is much more than the white boxed ones and the fully implemented ones, we have the hours almost evenly divided. So like, and that makes sense because a paper action block is very easy to make. A white box is not as easy, and a fully implemented action block takes a lot. So like, yeah, we have our efforts divided on those three. But how do we know if an action block should go from one stage to the other? Is it just guessing? Is it just like, yeah, saying, this one goes to the next stage? No. So like, we have a rubric that evaluates different categories and gives us a number that we can put in Excel, and we can like just sort it and see which one of our action blocks are better. So first, does it reinforce the mechanics? How much? Is it action or is it mental based? So like, we want to make a balance between those two. How difficult is it to white box? If it's too difficult to white box, maybe not this week. So number of assets required. If it needs like 1,000 art assets, we're not doing it. So delivers on promise. This is later, in later stages. So like, if a white box delivers on the promise from the paper action block. Physics skills tested and mental skills tested, like we want to scatter those around our action blocks. And how much did it engage the player? Also, like later stages when we already tested the action block. So yeah, this is a picture of how we grade our our action blocks. And yeah, we put this we can put this into Excel and sort it out, and we have our action blocks who will go to the next stage. Other thing that we also made is a world map with with all the metrics from all the stages. So this helps our level designers know how big is the level going to be and how much space is going to occupy. So for set dressing, what we have is the arena, which is our visual target. Okay, so we reimagined the arena. The arena is our greatest landmark. It's the place where we have all that bond going on with the beast and the player. So it has to be shocking, and it has to be very ceremonial. So we iterated on that. Oh. So iterate or die. Yeah, we thought about putting domes, we thought about putting statues, we thought about putting like a long way, and as you might remember, these two from up there are the ones that we showed in the previous presentation, and then we iterated, and this is the result. So yeah, this is the arena set dressed with more impact. It has some statues going around, and it has an entrance that goes like that, and it has all the statues going on to make it more ceremonial. And a bonus that we have here as well is we have one of our action blocks set dressed. So we have this action block, and it came from this to this. So we have one fully set dressed action block, and we can see all our environmental assets in there working, and we will show this later in presentation. So yeah, we have the statues, we have the floor tiles, and everything. So for audio as well, we have a rough pass of SFX, like our first pass on SFX. We'll also show it after in presentation. And for technical design, okay, something weird happened with technical design. It seems that they fusioned with programming, and they just created infinite productivity. So to honor this, I will present programming plus tech design together. So we wildly over-delivered on the programming side. It was unbelievable. This is all the stuff that this is a summary of all the stuff that we made as of now. So we refactored all the code. We made a third AI pass, camera lock on, tuning in, dodging to the beat or our combo system, beast health regenerator system, like I will explain how it regenerates after. Critical points for all 4 dances, basic UI implementation, locomotion modes for walking and strafing, action block implementations, first pass on metric system, and we have an interface for fmods for beat events, so like I can trigger stuff on beat 1, 2, 3, or 4. So, but remember what we promised. So like, for example, for AI, we say, oh yeah, we are doing a simple AI. We didn't. We did our 3rd pass on AI. I will explain later how complex it is. Then we said, oh yeah, we are doing a simple focusing mechanic. We didn't do the simple version. We have a complete focus mechanic with camera lock on, and we have different locomotion modes. So like when you focus, you change between those modes. We don't have a simple beast HP system, but we have a beast health system with regeneration, and it is depleted on stages. So like if I deplete beyond this point, it will not regenerate further. So we also have a combo system going on with dodging to the beat, as we wanted to do it. So these are some examples of the mechanics. Up here we can see the locking on. So like the camera always follows the object. Here we have the beast health system that depletes while I'm focusing on it, and it goes further and further and further if I have a longer combo streak. This one is actually the different locomotion modes. So like it goes from walking normally, and when I focus, it goes to strafing, left, right, back and forth. So these are all proxy assets, proxy animations, proxy everything. So, and this last one is what we called tuning in the last presentation, and we actually will call focus plus plus because it's an expansion on the focusing mechanic that we will show later in the game. So you have to. So you have to pair as I explained in the previous presentation, you have to pair 2 nodes together, one from the player and one from the actual object. So do you remember these systems? In the previous presentation, we had the interactable system, which was like whatever I focus on, I can dance, and I can interact with it in the same ways as the dance. And we have a bit tracking with fmod. We refactored this, and this enabled us to make much more features in less time. So like I think this is the key to our process and how we over-delivered a lot. So yeah, cool stuff. And okay, a new risk. So from now on, I will refer to our build as Kenny, because we're all the time we're like, oh my God, they killed Kenny, and it died. Like it's almost 10 times that the build blew in our faces. So yeah, I'm calling it Kevin. Kenny. Sorry, Kevin. So the build will be affected by our work and most likely break. So like that's natural. And we cannot be building every time because like that is taken from our time. So what we will do is set up a continuous integration system that will build the game continuously and continuously on the cloud, and will let us know when the build breaks. And if the build breaks, we know when it broke and what it caused it. So like that's what we will do from now on. Okay, AI. So this is a really oversimplification of how AI works. We have 3 states. First, attack, second, observe, and third, reposition. The attacking state doesn't fire if it's not on beat. So like the attacks are always on beat. If the players fire, we do a pounce attack, which is like jump and attack. And this jump is based on the distance of the player. So like if the player is far away, we jump the necessary distance to attack to that position. And if it's near, you just chase the player and attack. The observe state is actually the best and the best part of our AI because it lets the player have a respire and have a respire of the battle. So if the player is far, you run towards the player, and if the player is near, you observe the state. You get into the observed state and do one of two things. You do a brief pause, or you go around the player menacing. And the last one, our last state, is reposition. So like if the player is going around in the tail, what the beast does is it hops back, so like it always is facing the player. So this is a sneak peek of our AI. It is very complicated, but yeah, this is the root tree where all the decorators are. This is the attack branch with all that I showed. And this is the observation branch and the reposition branch. And this is the AI in motion. So let me show you for a bit. So you can see like the different branches being called, and there's a task branch, and it does different attacks depending on like what got randomly, and it doesn't like repeat attacks normally. It repositions, and it's doing a jump attack. There is like observing. So yeah, that's a sneak peek of how it works. Okay, for the management side, I can see Kevin's smile from here. Expected hours versus actual hours. Okay, so in production, it seems that we underestimate a lot. In programming, we overestimate a lot. And in art, we're pretty accurate. So this is the hours that we put in throughout all these weeks. The least hours are for meetings, which is good, and they went down, so that's great as well. Our most hours went in art, then in production, and then in programming. So, next one. So this is how completed our levels are. So we have the most completed one is the boss battle one, which we have like design completion almost to the top, and we have kind of completed visually. We need to iterate on it, like yeah. So like yeah, this is for our different levels, how completed they are visually and design-wise. And from the logged hours, which are like 1,500, we have 4,000 remaining hours to complete all of this. Okay, again. We have a playtesting plan because like at this point we need to playtest a lot. So we have to iterate or die. So yeah, our plan is the first time we will playtest is on March. We will do it here, and we are searching for designer feedback. So like game feel and mechanical adjustments. We will have a second pass and white box action blocks and boss battle, and we will show that. On April, we will reach out to other game development like groups here in Orlando. So like game dev nights, we will do like the exchange with the high school, and we will keep searching for designer feedback. On May and June, we will go to main campus for gamer feedback. So like it shifts to UX and gameplay. And we will have a completed portion of the game here. And in July, we will have the full game, and we will test bugs and polish with the general public. So yeah, we go from game devs to general public. And in process analysis, we did some interesting things as well. Okay, so here's Kevin. The previous task estimation process was Kevin would upload the tasks to Jira, people would upload their estimates, and leads would reconcile the estimates. But it wasn't as good, because first, Jira has a very unintuitive UI. Second, the reconciliation meeting was on the fly, and sometimes estimates were entered irregularly and at the end of the week. So what Kevin did was this. He would now export all the tasks to Google Sheets. People would fill in their tasks on Google Sheets. There would be a reconciliation meeting at 12:30 with the leads. After that, oh, okay, so this is on Monday. Then the reconciliation meeting is on Tuesday at 12:30, and we have a stand-up at 1. And after the stand-up, the people that haven't entered their estimates would stay. And then he would import them to Jira. So like all the generation of the Google Sheets and the import to Jira are automatic. So this made the process much, much better for people because they are more accustomed to Google Sheets as an interface rather than Jira. Okay, so the second process that we managed to make better is the asset checking. So like, Kevin would ask, is that task done? And we would be like, yep, it's done. But later that week, we realized that the task was actually not done, and it needed rework. Whoops. So sometimes tasks look done when you don't have a framework to see how completed they are. So what we did is an asset checking. So like we have rubrics for the different tracks to see if an asset is actually done. So like right now, we can actually say, oh yeah, this is done for sure. And numbers don't lie. So this is a better process right now. And we have a sprint retrospective, a visual retrospective. So we have a meeting, and Kevin just like puts stuff from waiting for approval to completed, and we go through all of our checklists. Okay, so how does March look for us? Okay, let's read this. Okay, for NPCs, we will have finished models and state-based dialogue trees. For the dancer, we will have a finished model, final rig, 2 polished dance animations, polished idle run animations. For the environment, we will have 12 polished assets, 8 foliage assets, 10 new assets, 3 integrated action blocks, and 1 more set rest action block. And for the beast, we will have the finished model, all beast proxy attacks in beast final rig, iteration of AI, and we will polish. So this is how March looks like for us. The thing is that this happened. So like in week 3, we will have GDC and spring break. Yeah, and this will probably make those tasks, some of them, gravitate towards this week. So like that's why we kept this week pretty free. But yeah, this is how it looks for us. And let's test the prototype. Okay. What we will show first is our visual target. So okay, so this is our visual target. So as we can see, the same as in the video, we have our frames per second here. And we have all of our environmental assets in. We have the lighting in, and here are our characters. So here is our snaky boy, and here's our lovely dancer. Yeah, as you can see, everything is set dressed with the environmental assets what we had, and the lighting is in place. So now, let's do the boss battle. Okay. Okay, let's test the boss battle now. Okay, as you can see, okay, let me play first. Do you hear that sound when I dodge? That means that I dodge one beat. So like the life of the beat goes down fast. A critical point has manifested, so I have to turn on this one. So the critical points don't let me go to the forehead of the beast and focus. So I have to alleviate them, and then I can go on with shooting the beast. And the better is my streak for dodging to the beat, the faster I will shoot it. Okay, another one. Come on. Okay, now I'm shooting faster. Oh no! Well, okay, this is the green back. But yeah, it goes on and yeah, till you depleted the whole boss thing. So okay, so now we will show our set dressed demo action block. Richie will show it. Okay. I don't remember. It was 2, I think. Okay. Give me a second. Please save it. Oh, the screen messages. As you can see, everything is going to the beat. Here we have our NPCs and we can talk to them. What? Okay, yeah, Joe. Okay, let's be nice to this. Let's keep going. You can do it, Richie. I believe in you. Go. Okay. I believe in you, Richie. Okay, and these arrows can actually be interacted, no? Okay, and then I will do a little test on audio. So, Aaron has given us some cool audio, as you can hear or not. Like there's background, like forest ambience. We have, I cannot hear anything. Okay. I guess you can hear it better than me, but okay, cool. So we have a footstep sound, we have a jumping sound, we have a dodging sound. We also have when I focus, well, you can dodge and jump and everything. And when you turn, we have an alleviation sound. And the interesting thing is, like, for example, let's say stepping on leaves. So the sound changes. This is directly on Fmod. This is a variable that changes. And let's say I'm going through wood. So it changes the sound as well. So Oops. That's what we have. See you on March. Thank you very much.
All right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, Beagles. So rather than wasting your time with an introduction, let's just show you what you all came here for. All right, Steve, hit it.
Thank you, thank you. Really, my changes really sorry.
As far as art goes, the main things they've been up to is our character model, a custom rig, animations, and lighting. So for our character, this is the original concept that we had. We've got Morgan, our spunky little wizard, and first he evolved in stopwatching. It was functional, but functional. I'll leave it at that. He then evolved into this. He's got some sculpting out. He's looking much better. And we added some color to him to bring a little more life into it. And then finally, we added this to give him more magical feel. And since we've got our character, let's go into this rig. So the need of a rig is to have expressive hands and fingers because the magician uses gestures and glasses. That kind of thing. And we wanted to paint our scenes using light. So many of our materials are flatter in color and then brought to life using our lighting. But we also wanted to keep in mind the awareness of light density. We don't want to overwhelm the player with light sources everywhere. So we were very selective of those lights. So this is the initial color gradient that we had. We have the green at the bottom, the one, orange at the left. Moving on to the purple, blues of the that was our initial intent. This is what we ended up with. We got the green at the bottom, the orange in the middle. We got a lot of carbon feedback on them. And we decided that well, if this is the there's stuff that we wanted to do. We had to review features that we already had and decide what do we want to do with them, because we can't accomplish everything. So the first up was the AI companion. It was a very ambitious idea that we had, and we just didn't have it functional satisfaction, especially with all the various features that we wanted to add. So it was very complicated to get our buddy AI to work with the time hours. So we would go ahead and go. As far as time talk goes, it was doable. It was kind of boring. It was nothing more than a glorified sandwich. It would have involved using a lot of doing instances of various longer. Frankly, we thought that it really wasn't important for those are some platforms. You could use it to slow down an object so you can grab it with telekinesis. So we felt that this was a great addition to our character's arsenal of powers. Our next mechanic, telekinetic move. Initially, we had it work as a tractor. Move something forward, move something back. It was all right. We did that because of mechanics as a limitation. We got rid of those and figured, let's expand telekinesis. That's a lot more fun to do. So now we can move objects wherever we please with telekinesis. And not only that, you can affect that object's timeline based on what you just excellent. You see the wall. Just projectiles at him. However, in the room to the side is a shield that he can telekinetically carry and hold in front of him, blocking all projectiles, allowing him to go down this hallway and into the next room. Now he's in this next room. This is lower elevation area. There's no direct path to get from here. However, this is blocked here. So player, go down over here, hit the switch with this telekinetic push, which gives him access to this block. But then pull that block towards him, jump on it, right back across the gap. That allows him to jump over here and go into the next room. This one, when he goes back to the room, it's locked. Hold it down. To the end. So, Steve, how about you show him in action?
I won't let you push me around, Morgan.
Thank you, Steve. Well done. So, production side of stuff, the boring part that none of you actually care about, but we're going to go through it anyway. So, task tracking. So, for task tracking, for Sprint 2, which is from the beginning of the month to the 14th, we did pretty well. So this is 112 passes. 400,000 passes. Well, 3, which we're about halfway through now. We've got, as of today, exceeding expectations. We are at 150% expected hours. For the total for the year, 61%. We're doing really well. Give yourself a round of applause. As for future actions, for milestone 3, I want to get some basic animation. Get some enemy AI completed. Get the Morgan model finalized in engine, as well as starting our online presence structure testing. As for milestone 4, we're going to get the basic enemy animations in, get the boss AI in, get the enemy art assets in, and have level 1 finished with set dress and everything